The existing slopes flatten out once you get into the buffer area, so there may be some benefit in slowing the water down by actually having some of that riprap in the buffer area versus starting it further up the slope. But this buffer question it's an outstanding question. Let's see. That 1 minute, yeah. So actually, like 10 seconds. So we can talk about the rest of it in the meeting if you want to. And they may have addressed some of these, but I honestly just haven't had a chance to review it.
Sounds like this might need to be postponed. How do you feel about that? We're going to have to make it real brief, but we will get back to you at the regular meeting.
Yeah, my name's Logan Dunn. I'm with Dewberry Engineering. You know, we have 10 comments here. We feel like we've addressed 9 of them this afternoon. The 10th comment being the buffer zone. You know, Matthew and I talked about shortening up the outlet structure and pulling the grading back outside of the buffer. So really what we're just, and we sent a sketch of that this afternoon, but what we're requesting is I guess a waiver to allow the riprap in the buffer. And Matthew's correct. He hasn't had time to review the other 9 comments. He would just have to take my word for it. So I will say we got these.
He might take it, but that don't mean we're going to take it.
No, I'm with you. But I will say we did receive these comments, and we were kind of we submitted them last week. We received them at 4:06 this afternoon, and just kind of did the best we could in the 2 hours that we had.
Is this going to put you in a substantial bind if this gets postponed till the next regular meeting? Give everybody time to work on it, and possibly you to work on.
I don't think anybody wants to go back to their client and say that they couldn't get it approved.
Understand.
But I do think this is ahead of
the
rest
denied.
of the site. We don't want it to be denied.
Okay.
So I would say if we could get there tonight, that's awesome. If not, then we'll see you in a month.
All right. Thank you. All right.
Okay, thank you.
We're going to adjourn this, bring this work session to an end. We'll call the regular meeting to order. Roll call, Dana, please.
Gant, here. Vaughn. Lindsay, Smith. Here. Nelson.
Here.
Lazenby. Mayor Bass.
Here.
All right, thank you, Dana. I'd like to ask everybody to please stand for the invocation and pledge allegiance. David, do you mind leading us here this evening?
Father, we thank you for everything you give us, and we thank you for this country and this state, this city that we live in. Thank you for each person that here that gives of their time. And Father, we ask that you give them wisdom to make the decisions that are right for this community. Father, we are aware that this is a dangerous world, and we're thankful for the people that put their lives on the line to not only fight for, protect, defend, keep the very freedoms that we're exercising here tonight, and that so many times we show up and just take it lightly that it will always be here, and there's never a guarantee for that. But Father, we thank you for your hand that protects us, that continues to protect us, and then we ask that you bless us. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, David. All right, we have a city council report.
Yes, sir. Just a couple of items of note for y'all. Let's see. We did enter into an agreement between the city and AlDOT for maintenance along the right-of-way on the causeway for construction of Valor Park, where it allows us to disturb that. So let's see. We did, I guess, of major note, we did pass our 2026 budget. And so quite a few things to talk about there. The mayor may want to highlight some of those or not, but we did add a couple of new police officers this year. We approved that. Some new firefighters and also some employees for parks and public works, a couple for each there. So pretty proud of that. We also achieved some cost savings, I think, or hopefully long-term cost savings, but also better better quality for, we're going to enter into some vehicle leases through Enterprise Rent-A-Car, save some money on capital expenses for vehicles and get better bang for our buck on those. So, anything you'd like to add on that, Mr. Mayor?
So it was an amendment from the continuing budget resolution that was put in place at the end of last fiscal year prior to the transition. So I would just like to thank Councilwoman Brabner and Councilman Ramsey and all the council really that helped throughout that process. I really wanted the council to be involved and hear what the asks were from department heads. That's something they really hadn't heard over the years. Basically, they were in the past presented with stuff and said, this is what we're going to do. This time they were able to hear actually some of the asks. So when they get stopped at the grocery store, either by constituents or department heads, and ask why didn't we get this? It wasn't a shock and, wide-eyed time where they didn't know what had been asked for. So I think it's a good thing. One of the things that's included in this year's budget is the comprehensive plan, which we got estimates for, which will also be looking at ordinances as well as part of that process. So that will be getting started. They sent estimates, I believe, Casey, was that Thursday or Friday last week? So we'll be kind of pouring through that process, what we do want, don't want as a part of that. So exciting time to get that done. So another month or two we'll be gearing up for next year's budget process. So, but it is good to have that off our plates. Real quick before we move on, I did want to say too, I know some of our firefighters that were here earlier had to leave for a call. We did have one of our firefighters this morning that was involved in a car accident on Jimmy Faulkner. I was over at the hospital a little while ago seeing him. He's going to have several surgeries tomorrow, so he's got a long road of, recuperation and all that kind of stuff. So if you guys wouldn't mind just keeping him in your thoughts and prayers. And then also this weekend, the police department, some of you guys have seen the news stories took off this afternoon. They were involved with a nonprofit company that did some training last week. They were able to do a human trafficking operation at one of our hotels, and there were 7 arrests made. So good work, obviously, on both sides of public safety for the city. A lot of good things going on.
All right, thank you, Mayor. All right, let's see, we have some minutes to get approved. January 26th work session, February 9th work session, and February 9th regular session. Do we have any errors or changes to note? All right, minutes stand approved as written. All right, we have old business here, agenda item 260301, application for land use. We'll have a public hearing on this agenda item. It's for golf cart sales. The location is 30500 State Highway 181, Suite 228. The applicant is Drive for Show, Carts LLC, DBA, Cardiology.
Mr. Chairman, this applicant is requesting land use approval in order to open golf cart sales in Suite 228 of the Eastern Shore Center. The proposed use that's being requested here is not specifically identified in the table of permitted uses of the Spanish Fort zoning ordinance. Therefore, it more or less falls back on the Planning Commission to make that determination of the most clearly analogous use. And I think based on conversations that were had in the work session, it does sound like everybody's in agreement that this use would be allowed in the B3, which is the current zoning for the site. Now, there are some questions remaining about display of products on sidewalks and things like that, and David can go over that a little more in detail.
Mr. Chairman, the applicant has requested to be allowed to have golf cart sales at that particular location at the Eastern Shore Center. It is presently Zone B3. As mentioned, we do not have a use of golf cart sales located within the table of permitted uses that clearly applies in that way. For example, just for the public's understanding is every use that we can think of or comes, we try to put in the table so someone that's wanting a use can see that use and know if it's allowed, what district it's allowed in, what type of approvals it has to have. If the use is in there, for example, and it said golf cart sales, and it was had an R in B2, B3, B4, that would mean it'd be allowed by right. If it had a P, it could only be allowed with Planning Commission approval. If it had an S, it would mean it could only be allowed with special exception to the Board of Adjustment. So there are different types of review process depending on how the zoning ordinance reads. If golf cart sales were specifically stated in the table but had nothing in the blanks beside it, that would mean by definition that it's prohibited. Since it is not listed in the table, the zoning ordinance specifically provides for that provision and says, in any case where a requested use is not specifically listed in the table of permitted uses section of this ordinance, its status shall be determined by the Planning Commission by reference to the most clearly analogous use or uses that are specifically referred to in the table of permitted uses. When the status of a use has been so determined by the Planning Commission, such determination shall thereafter have general application to all uses of the same type and shall be added to the table of permitted uses. And so, just to kind of give you an idea of some analogous uses, some closer, some not so close, but just to give you kind of an overview, automobile and truck sales are allowed in B4 by right. Bicycle sales are allowed in B2, B3, and B4 by right. Boat sales are allowed in B4 by right. Farm and garden equipment and supply stores are allowed in B3 and B4 by right. And then motorcycle sales and service are allowed in B4 only. So clearly when you have more of a service side, automobile sales, truck sales, motorcycles, that's a B4 use, but other sales are allowed in B3 and B2. There's another category that says travel trailer, camper, farm equipment, implements, and mobile home sales, new and used, are allowed by right in B4, I think in M1, but it specifically says here, need not be enclosed within a structure. But any mechanical or body repair must be done entirely within the structure, which shall not have any opening facing the residential district other than a stationary window within 100 feet of a residential district. And the reason that it says need not be enclosed within the structure is because in section 6.1 of the general section that I read from a while ago says this language as well. It says, in every use in any district except in the M1 district shall be conducted entirely within a completely enclosed structure unless expressly exempted from enclosure requirements in this ordinance. And so that's why in the table you'll sometimes see the words need not be enclosed within a structure. So in this case, there's a couple of things that are going on. One is we need to determine which classification or which zoning classification it should be in, and I have no problem recommending, I don't think anybody does, based on our work session, that B3 would be an appropriate classification. I'd go ahead and say B4 as well, to the extent that it was ever needed in the future. And so if you want to consider making that finding, then because that's a B3 zoning classification, they would be allowed to do that use in B3. The next question would be then is they've requested to be allowed to display at least one golf cart for sale outside the facility, outside the business out front. And because of that definition there that requires everything to be done within an enclosure, I think it would be appropriate for you all to make a determination about whether or not it should be there, and then us to create an amendment in the ordinance to make sure that that's clear, that it can be allowed going forward as well, if that makes sense.
All right, thank you, David.
And I'll add one more to it, I'm thinking about, I'm sorry.
Okay.
The other one is you wouldn't want to let somebody to be able to do something like that to kind of get around signage as well. So you might want to consider whether or not you want to allow them to have a sign on the golf cart as well or not. We had some issues before where we had automobile dealers parking cars around, and basically it was nothing but off-premise advertising because they weren't selling the cars here. They're just trying to get you to come to their place in another city. And so you'd want to be careful about that as well, at least for discussion purposes.
All right, thank you. All right, we'll open it up for discussion.
I was just going to say about the use, and should we look at that maybe and say only electric golf carts, like we did over for the go-kart track. We said only electric go-karts. That would be my only thing. Other than that, I think it's very acceptable in my view.
Just real quick, as it relates to the gas.
The majority of the carts would be electric, but it would be nice to be able to have them. I mean, we wouldn't have a very minimal amount of gas carts, to none. I mean, but on occasion, you might have one come in, or we might have one that someone purchased from one of our other stores, and it might go through that store to be delivered. But it would not be warehousing a large amount of gas carts there.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but it would not be started or operated or run inside the premise due to fumes and hazardous issues.
Would you be storing gasoline in the carts or to fill them up, right? How would that work? If they're especially if they're inside the store, I guess.
Sure. I mean, we would not store gas on the premise to say that, if one were to come through to be delivered, it would probably have to be running, so I would say that at some point there might be some gas inside of an approved gas tank in a cart that might get passed through to be sold. I could see that happening, so I don't want to tell you that it's not going to. But that's definitely not going to be the majority of our cart. Right now, 100% of the carts we sell are electric.
We have a representative from the fire department here. I believe he's trying to get your attention.
Just want, Mr. Chairman, with your permission, just wanted to ask a quick question. I remember us asking the question before, and I thought the concern had gone away because we weren't going to have any gas there. But is under the fire code, et cetera, is it okay to store gas within golf carts inside the building, or does that create a problem?
Well, David, I'm thinking about, number one, Bass Pro. I'm sure they've got some gasoline-driven engines. And I'm also thinking about, what about all the different storefronts that have a lawnmower for cutting the grass, or a weed eater, or a blower that they store inside their building?
Yeah.
So,
And I don't know, I wouldn't know if, for example, Bass Pro Shop's got boats that are inside. You can walk up and look at them. The question is, do they have fuel in them, or do they keep those outside? Certainly, I guess that's more of a fire question, and we kind of got off of that because I was under the impression that they were just going to do electric. For purposes of the zoning, I mean, just like we're talking about it, you could have gasoline-powered sales, but just like we say, need not be enclosed within a structure, we could put a provision that says, but no on-site storage of fuel. You can sell the cart. You can sell gas or electric. You just can't store fuel and have fuel in the vehicles.
And that
So we could create that opportunity for it to be sold and not just limit it to electric. We can do it that way, if that makes sense.
So from the building code standpoint and the fire code standpoint, you also have to look at Ace and Lowe's and all these with high pile storage for hazmat. Most of these carts, people are going to run off of True Fuel or regular 87. You're not going to be storing 87 fuel inside this place. But we would just require them to have a hazardous material locker that's 2-hour rated, and they're not allowed to store more than 50 gallons of liquid inside that locker. That's how you would maintain those rules with the fire and building code.
What about within the individual golf carts themselves? If they brought in 4 or 5 that had gas in the tanks, is that allowed inside?
Well, transport, like with DOT and stuff like that, they're not allowed to wet move any type of equipment. So that's a big DOT issue anyway, if they're transporting with fuel inside of a golf cart. But they're supposed to show up to them dry with minimal oil and everything to just lubricate for storage, but not enough to seize up a motor or anything. But it's not going to be a big hazmat issue, especially with looking at the battery conversation. The batteries would be more of an issue than the fuel is ever going to be. And with code, they're never gonna meet anything that far exceeds what the code allows. It's too small of a tenant space.
My only reason for bringing this up was, you know, you mentioned Lowe's and Bass Pro. Those are those are freestanding buildings. These have a separation wall. I don't know how thick the separation wall is, but I mean, you can knock on a wall and hear the next tenant, vice versa. So they're close. That was my only reason for bringing this up, because it's not just one store that could be impacted. That's the only reason.
No, and that was a great point, and great question, and that's why I wanted to make sure we were understanding the right way, because originally, we were thinking that there was not gonna be any gas, it was all gonna be electric. And so the concern then was this lithium batteries will catch on fire and you just can't put them out. You know, they keep coming back and they're hard to put out with the rating walls that you all just talked about. But I think the fire folks got comfortable with that and we're okay with that risk. So I certainly don't see a problem with them being allowed to sell gasoline powered. They just should not be storing any within the vehicles themselves, and to the extent that they're allowed under code to do it, it has to meet all requirements, so far as what Christian was talking about, unless y'all feel otherwise.
All right, any other discussion?
So then the last question would be, are you comfortable with the allowing for the display cart out front? Certainly it could not be displayed in such a way that would block pedestrian traffic or ADA compliance or anything like that. But is that something that you're comfortable with? And if it is, that may be something that we want to clarify, because unless we do that, the ordinance specifically says that everything has to be conducted within a building. So unless we create an exception in the table, that could be problematic for them if a neighbor wanted to, complain about it.
So I looked a little bit at the sign ordinance. At first, I was thinking this would be most analogous to like a sandwich sign that somebody put out on the sidewalk or whatever, but we do have reference to portable signs in there, which specifically says motorized vehicles or things on wheels. I forget how it's. So if anything, we may need to amend that to say, like we do with table of permitted uses by exception or with special permission. So I don't know if that's something we have an appetite for, to say this particular use, we have an exception for that, or just case by case, do we make exceptions? But to me, it's most analogous to some sort of portable outdoor sign. So putting it in the table of permitted uses, are you saying that we could define that exception to the sign ordinance there?
Well, I don't think I may have confused y'all a bit. I hope I didn't do that. So under the zoning ordinance, we're making a determination about which classification. And so I think B3 and B4 are clearly appropriate for that type of use. The next question would be, are you going to allow them to display a cart out front? Because the zoning ordinance says that all business and all uses shall be conducted entirely within a completely enclosed structure unless expressly exempted from enclosure requirements in the ordinance. That's why bicycles and everybody else can't put their stuff out, that way. So in this case, if you were going to do it and we're going to put it in writing, we would say these uses are allowed in B3 and B4, and then we'd put a semicolon and we'd say one golf cart may be displayed out front, and put those conditions there that go along with that, as long as it doesn't impede vehicle traffic, pedestrian traffic, et cetera.
Yeah, I like that better. We're not looking at this as a sign. This is just a display or a product that's being sold and displayed outside. I like that much better.
Right.
I just don't want us to contradict the sign ordinance that we worked so hard on.
Now, where I may have led you down a road and confused you a little bit was I did talk about sign, but it was whether or not we would allow them to place the business name on the golf cart, because they're going to have a sign on the front of the building and nobody else gets a sign out front. And you have the question about, when we had dealers parking cars around trying to drive. So the question then becomes should we also say that you can park it there, but you can't put any signage on it? So That's what y'all feel comfortable with.
All right, any other discussion?
I think you'd get more complaints, would you not, if we allowed them to put a sign that had the name of the company from surrounding people saying, if we're really being strenuous with signage overall, wouldn't you get more of a complaint if we said that would be okay? I can't imagine if someone sees that golf cart, they're gonna look around and see where it goes. I mean, they don't have to have that sign.
And
But with that sign,
I
what
think
about
they're
a
okay with
price?
that. I spoke
Yeah.
with them before, they're okay with not having a sign, but I
Yeah.
just want to make sure that we're clear, that everybody understands.
The intent is to advertise with the style of golf cart and such, but it is not an intent to place a banner on the golf cart that says cardiology.
All right, anybody else? I will have a public hearing. Anybody here wish to speak? No? All right, public hearing's closed. Any further discussion?
So, Mr. Chairman, this is kind of an unusual situation. The
You wanna help
automobile truck
word the-
sales are B4, farm and garden equipment and supply store are B3 and B4 by right. The other ones specifically address need not be enclosed within a structure in B4. The farm and garden equipment doesn't address it, but it certainly would be clearer to state that. So you can do this in one of two ways. You can make a determination that it should be allowed by right in B3 and B4, and make the statements that they'll be allowed to display one golf cart out in front of the business, or you can make the determination that they'll be allowed to do it by right in B2 and B3, and then let's come back with an amendment that clearly addresses the placement of the golf cart, the limitations on that, so that we do that clearly in the right way.
All right, that's what I thought we were doing.
Okay.
Your second option there, where
Okay.
we're gonna go back in a mid, but not in a B2, in a B3 and B4.
Okay.
I think you just
I'm
stated
sorry, you're
B2 and
right.
B3.
You're right. So
B3 and
tonight, if you
B4.
wanted to make the determination, you could make the determination that, that we believe this use would be allowed in B3 and B4. You could vote on that, then they could begin to move forward, and then we would come back with an amendment that would define under what conditions they could display out front, outside the structure.
Okay. All right, everybody understand? All right, do we have a motion? Or do we have any other discussion? All right, discussion is closed. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we allow for the land use for golf cart sales in this shopping center area for, be allowed in B3 and B4.
The recommendation would be, along the lines, is that it would be in B3 and B4 by right.
By right.
All right, we need to add anything on that, David, as far as being able to have a golf cart out?
Well, we're going to come back with an
Come
amendment on
back.
that one.
Okay.
The only thing I would say is that, from what y'all have said, is that everybody understands, and in the amendment, it's going to clearly state that there can be no storage of fuel unless it's done in accordance with applicable codes, regulations, those kind of things. And so we'll address the fuel storage, and we'll address the display in an amendment that we bring back to you.
Okay. All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Kurt, do we have any discussion on the motion? All right, roll call. Dana, please.
Gant,
Yes.
Vaughn, Smith,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Lazenby, Mayor Bass.
Yes.
All right, motion's approved. All right, we have, you're welcome. All right, we have agenda item 260302, application for site plan approval. This is Longleaf Maintenance Facility. The location is east side of Alabama 225, just north of Burns Lake Road. The applicant is Dewberry Engineers on behalf of MAG 7 LLC. Casey, your staff report, please, sir.
Mr. Chairman, this applicant is proposing to construct a new 9,000 square foot golf course maintenance facility with associated parking, drainage, and landscaping on an undeveloped property at the northwest corner of the Longleaf PUD that was recently annexed into the corporate limits of the city of Spanish Fort along AL 225. The overall property is 3.68 acres, and the applicant intends to utilize 57% of that property for hard structures, building, parking, pavement, concrete, etc., with adequate landscaping as required by the Landscape and Tree Protection Ordinance for this portion of the site improvements. I had some additional discussions or notes on here, I guess, prior to the resubmittal this afternoon. So there have been a few things that are in here listed that have, I believe, been addressed so far. Unfortunately, at this point, we haven't had quite enough time to review everything that was resubmitted. I feel fairly confident that sounds like it's mostly been addressed. Because of the lack of time to actually review the resubmittal, I don't know that we can give a recommendation to approve at this meeting.
Okay. Sounds to me like it's deficient. Well, it may not be deficient, but y'all haven't had time to review. Go ahead.
Logan Dunn with Dewberry. I understand it may not be the most efficient use of everybody's time. There's 10 comments. Would it be crazy to try and discuss 10 comments if there's nothing behind us, is there?
We're not going to do that tonight.
Okay. I didn't want to be disrespectful of anybody's time. I just, with us
I
all
want to
being
give
here.
them sufficient time to look through it and make sure everything's what they want, and not make any spur-of-the-moment decisions or judgments.
So,
I want
Mr.
them to
Chairman,
have the time. Now, what we could do, and I would be up for this, it's not their fault. They got you all the comments in time, or you didn't get them your comments in a real timely fashion, or how did this come about?
No, so we gave them comments back a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
And we just got the revisions late Thursday, and I reviewed it over the weekend and provided comments to Casey on Sunday. And then we got the comments to them. My comments were delivered to them today.
Sure.
And so we just got this resubmitted information from them while we were sitting here.
That's right.
Okay.
And yeah, we were a little slow to get the comments. We actually used every bit of time. We submitted them on the last day. We have no issues with the time frame of, I think Matthew's, he worked this weekend to get us comments back today, so I mean, there's no issue.
We could help you out a little bit, I believe, if the rest of the commission is on board with this, but I wouldn't mind having a special meeting at our next regular work session, which would only delay you by a few weeks versus that would give you all time to coordinate between each other and correspond on getting these items rectified.
yeah,
Matthew,
that was what I was going to say. Why don't we propose to do a special meeting either before or after the next work session? So it's not drawn out another month, just
Right.
2 more
Matthew,
weeks.
would that give you plenty of time, you think, to
Oh, yeah,
yell
absolutely.
back and forth and get it worked out?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
You good with
I
that?
typically
Yes.
provide comments back within a few days of receiving them, of receiving a submittal. One thing that we do need to talk about, though, and get a little bit of understanding from you guys, is about the impacts to the wetland buffer,
I agree.
so that we can provide them with guidance on whether or not they're gonna need to pull all of the infrastructure from the wetland buffer, or if there's some level of comfort with allowing riprap within that buffer area.
So would riffraff would not be allowed normally? Is that,
Typically, it would not be allowed. I can understand the logic behind placing it in that location. The buffer area is flatter than it's less, the slopes aren't as steep. And so there's some justification for putting it there in the buffer in order to lessen the chances of erosion within that area.
would we be
But
setting a
there's-
precedence, though, by allowing them to do that?
There's not really a lot of wiggle room in the ordinance for allowing any disturbance in a buffer at all, other than those items that I listed earlier, which are constructions of piers and docks. It talks about perennial waterways as well, so piers and docks and boathouses would be obviously in a perennial waterway. Construction of outdoor recreation infrastructure, including hiking or biking trails, boardwalks, boat or kayak launches, information kiosks, viewing platforms, and hunting blinds, conservation of soil, vegetation, water, fish, shellfish, and wildlife, controlling invasive species, maintaining existing ditches, water courses, farm ponds, utilities, and roadways, provided the activity does not involve the expansion of roadways, drainage ditches, or related improvements into previously unimproved rights-of-ways or portions of rights-of-ways, maintaining existing structures consistent with standards set forth herein.
What is riffraff? What are you talking about?
So what we're talking about is the items that are allowed within a wetland buffer versus riprap.
But
Yeah, what
she
is
said
that, what I'm talking about?
it's
Oh, okay.
large rocks.
Yeah, the way you read that, it almost sounds like it's specifically excluded.
It does.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, so hard to make an exception. Was this not taken into consideration when laying out the whole thing, or is that just something that came?
I'll
to your
say,
attention after?
you know, it is beneficial for slowing the velocity. It also is beneficial to the layout. When you're able to place the riprap at the toe of the slope versus in the slope, it does allow you to push the pond slope a little bit further. I would say if y'all allowed it, you would not be the only ones that allow this. I mean, we've done this in several municipalities over the years. I discussed this with Kathy Barnett in our office, who's our environmental department's manager, and she's been in this area of expertise for, I don't know, 25 years, and she felt like it was a reasonable ask. I don't live in that world full time, so I couldn't speak to it as eloquently as she could. But anyway, yeah.
I'm wondering why we didn't allow it, and so therefore why should we, like, obviously, we don't allow it. So what would be different this time that would make it okay?
I'm thinking we need to stay with what the restrictions are, and y'all need to revise it and get it out of the wetland area.
Okay.
Now, that's my thoughts. Y'all may have different opinions on that, but
I'm gonna rely real heavy on staff on this one, because I'm surely not an expert on
I'm not either,
wetlands.
that's why I say, what makes this a difference? I mean, I'm very willing to allow exceptions if there's real reasons for it, not, I keep seeing a shaking head down there, so that's not good.
I mean, the argument that he has is that if he discharges further up the slopes are steeper, so there's a greater chance of erosion. Whether that is enough of a justification, I don't know. It's really a judgment call. Really so I would feel comfortable with it, but I question whether or not it's allowed per the letter of the ordinance. The riprap in the buffer.
If you had to move the riprap out of this area, I think he just mentioned, but can you elaborate on what that would look like?
Sure.
Say is, okay, you can't put the riprap in this wetland area. What does that look like for you as an engineer?
Sure. So he's on the screen behind you. I don't know if y'all you have to strain your neck too hard to see that, but the riprap is the little pile of, looks like a little hatch. Yeah, that's the riprap there, and then we have a pond outfall structure that connects the pond to that riprap. All of those curved lines are contours, 1 foot elevation proposed contours. So we've got a hidden line, a dashed line there that represents the wetland buffer, that line there. If we pull that riprap south completely out of the buffer, then really we would have to pull all of those contours in the same distance. So I'm trying to do this without getting too technical.
Logan, is there room to take this pond and shift it this way? I know this road will have to come over closer to the property line, but there's, this distance over here seems to be comparable to the distance that is encroached into the buffer.
Sure. We could look at shifting that. I would say probably my first starting point would be to just raise the pond. If we lost some volume on the north side, I would just try and raise the pond a few feet and see if we can offset that volume loss. I don't think it's insurmountable. I also don't know that it's an unreasonable request. I think we'll do whatever y'all feel is best for, how y'all want us to handle it.
Well, if you sound like that there is a possibility that you could do something else, and then you wouldn't, I don't know why I wouldn't go
Sure.
along with that.
Sure, I'm with you, I'll be honest, if I would have known I was gonna be standing here having this discussion, I would have probably had it different. But, I think we can get it to work without having it there. If we weren't, I can come back and ask again.
I think I'm with Kurt that we need to let our engineers and staff work with you on that and what you come up with, and you're our professional. We'll take your
So does he
take your
need to
advice
ask,
working with.
I'm sorry, does he need to ask to postpone this?
Yeah,
Okay, okay.
Okay.
and everybody up for a special meeting that would be at 6 p.m. before our next regular.
Mr. Chairman, I got one more question. Just thinking, I don't know the grades, but instead of just making it go here, could you move the outfall line over here and let it fall there and then flow down? And that keeps it out of the wetlands.
We could look at that. It's
It might be,
certainly a
might be easier
possibility.
for you. Because as Matthew was looking here, your grading gets to be a little close to the line here. Whereas if you just move the outfall line over here, you can stay out of the wetlands and then accomplish the same thing as long as the grading works for you.
Absolutely. And we'll look at all of those possibilities. Thank you.
All right. So we're going to set the special meeting for 6 p.m. before our next work session. All right? All right, anything else?
Do you,
Two agenda items that's been postponed. That was 260303, 260304. We were going to have public hearings on these agenda items. Anybody here for them?
I just want to say thank you.
Okay.
And, Mr. Chairman, just to clarify
All
on
right.
that, those two items have been withdrawn completely. So, right,
Excuse me?
the two items you just went over have been withdrawn, not postponed. So we didn't advertise for public hearing for that.
All right, we have public participation. Anybody here wish to speak? March 30th. All right, we have a few announcements. The next regular meeting of the Planning Commission will be held Monday, April 13th. A work session will begin at 6 p.m. in the multipurpose room of the Spanish Fork Community Center, followed by the regular meeting at 6:30. The next informal work session of the Planning Commission will be held Monday, March 30th. It will actually commence after we have a 6 p.m. special meeting. And the submission deadline for the April regular meeting agenda is Tuesday, March 10th at 12 noon. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Meeting's adjourned. Do what?